Hello and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about the recently released books. Welcome back again. This is Ray Walters. Some stories begin with a mission. Others begin with a wound. Inadvertent Consequences, The Voice, begins with both. It follows Adam Tangere, a man whose life is marked early by illness, grief, and a mysterious ability he never asked for. What starts in a hospital room in St. Louis eventually reaches the Korean Peninsula, where one man's private search for honor and answers collides with political power, buried history, and the dangerous possibility of changing the course of nations. This is a thriller that moves between the personal and the geopolitical, between memory and history, loss and responsibility, intention and consequence. At its center is a question that gives the story its weight. When someone has the power to change history, how does he know whether he should? Here to talk with us about Inadvertent Consequences, The Voice, his debut novel, is journalist, editor, and storyteller, Mark Anthony. Mark, welcome to the Author Roundup.
Thank you, Ray. I'm pleased to be here and I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to talking about Inadvertent Consequences with your audience.
Mark, first off, congratulations on getting this book published. This came out sometime in January. And now we're talking about it. Can you please share a little bit about your experience in getting this book written and published?
Yeah, modern publishing is a challenge for new authors such as myself. Not only is it hard to find a publisher that'll take your book, it's hard to find an agent that will help you get your book to a publisher. So I spent quite a bit of time, sadly, learning the difficulty of that process. And in so doing, I found a bit of a hybrid model through Archway Publishing, quote unquote, self-publishing, but with the assistance of an affiliate of Simon and Schuster. It's the publishing business is not for the faint of heart, and you need to have determination and stick-to-itiveness, and then once the book is published, the real work has just begun. The writing part is easy.
Curious question. How long did it take you to finish this book, like writing it?
I had been dabbling with it the better part of 10 years. I was a single father. I worked full time. So I would get moments of inspiration and get rolling. But when I left my last company at the end of 2003, and I started working on it in earnest really in 2004. And once I had the ability to focus and pay attention to it, it came rather easily. And the next book will be much shorter and easier to write. I understand the process now, and I look forward to cranking out more novels.
All right. So your book is titled Inadvertent Consequences, The Voice. And as we speak, our viewers and listeners, well, mostly our viewers can see the cover of your book on their screens right now. As a matter of fact, you have your book with you. Now, I wanted to ask this question to formally open this conversation. Nice cover for your book.
Thank you.
For our viewers and listeners who are new to the story, how would you introduce Inadvertent Consequences, The Voice, and the journey of Adam Tangere?
Yeah, I like the tagline that we developed for the book. What if one ordinary man had the power to alter history?
Yeah.
Would he? And Adam Tangier learns he has a destiny to fulfill great things in life
Mm,
with help of a gift he never knew he received. Many years later, in 2016, we're in Pyongyang, the capital of the Democratic People's Republic, otherwise known commonly as North Korea.
mm.
And he has a plan to test his gift in a most provocative way. A man with a greater destiny than he ever imagined embarks on a personal quest of honor. Um, this geopolitical thriller, as I refer to it, merges personal tragedy, as you mentioned, global conflict, and an unexplained paranormal gift against the backdrop of Korean Peninsula tensions. It dares to ask, if given the power to alter the course of history, would one have the courage and the wisdom to use it?
And that's what I find fascinating about the story that you have written. Why? Because it's the power that Adam Tangier, and I don't want to go ahead and spoil too much. It's for our viewers and listeners to find out, but it's to me it is unique because of his gift, because of that great power. And not many books do showcase or feature powers like that because it's just heavy. Like me thinking about writing a book that has that kind of storyline, that has a protagonist, that has the kind of power, for me is a little bit challenging to write from start to finish. And so that's what I find unique in your book. Now, you mentioned, and it's a given that this book, the story of your book, begins with the protagonist Adam in North Korea, then takes readers back to his childhood illness in St. Louis. Why did you choose to open with global tension and then return to such an intimate personal wound?
Yeah, the story, as I mentioned, begins in 2016 with Adam arriving in North Korea to search for a long lost relative from the Korean War.
Mm,
Um, I thought it was important, though, to backtrack at that point once he's sort of introduced to the situation in North Korea. I thought it was important to backtrack to 1970 when he's a young adolescent and he's very sick in the hospital. And this is important background to understand because this is when he's given this mysterious gift as he's sick in the hospital that he
okay.
later uses throughout his life. And then as the story unfolds, he nearly dies from the illness and
Yeah.
eventually leaves the hospital forever changed with this mysterious power.
Mm,
I read a lot of books, geopolitical, international affairs, politics, spy thrillers, that sort of genre, which I think this book fits into, even though it has a curious storyline, as you mentioned. Um, and those genres tend to hop around back in time, et cetera, to explore background information for the character or the story. It's a common device used these days by authors. And I thought it made sense here because having Adam in North Korea with this power, with
mm.
no basis for understanding why he has that power, I thought it was important to tell his early story.
All right. What I noticed is that Adam's childhood illness it's not just background information. It seems to shape the man he becomes. What did you want readers like myself to see about the long-term effect of suffering on a person's character?
Yeah, there are a couple levels to Adam's suffering, as you call it. Um, he's very sick, and the doctors are helpless to return him to health when he's in the hospital in 1970. His mother and grandmother are desperate to save him. He's in a bad way, and I'm pretty sure he knows it.
Mm,
Um, After a particularly tough medical procedure, He has what I would refer to as an out-of-body experience. After that dream, hallucination, paranormal experience, whatever you call
Yeah.
it, he
Okay.
rallies and miraculously begins to return to health. The other aspect of Adam's suffering at that time is the departure of Kathy, a family friend from his life.
Yes.
He loves her. He's lost without her. I'll leave it at that. I think reading about that part of the story is compelling, and I'd prefer not to depict it here. I'd rather the reader experience it with Adam.
Yes. Definitely, they should. And since we're talking about Kathy, another character in the book, her presence in Adam's life is brief, but significant. It was deeply important. Without giving too much away, what does she represent in the emotional heart of the story?
Yeah. And again, without disclosing too much and stealing the experience from the reader, Kathy is one of the few people that Adam leans on while he is
Yes.
sick and desperate for love and goodness. His mom and his grandmother are grief stricken and terrified he might die. So they're no fun, if you will. Kathy brings him treats and plays games with Adam. When she leaves the story, it's heartbreaking. So that's another level of suffering. But as
Mhm.
Adam's dream experience unfolds, it actually transcends the rest of his life. And Kathy comes to Adam in his dreams to let him know that he is destined for greatness. So, yes, she's deeply important to the story and to Adam.
All right, let's talk about Adam's unusual ability. My take when I was going through your book is that it, the book raises the question of whether that unusual ability is a gift, a burden, or something more complicated. So, how did you approach writing that kind of power without making the story only about the power itself?
Adam's gift is compelling and it is strong enough to be used for bad and evil as much
Yes.
as good. Um, Throughout his life, after being sick as a youth, he uses it judiciously and always in a positive way. I wrote his story with an ethical man in mind. He's
Okay.
not power hungry. He's not greedy. He
Okay.
is a good person. So while he uses the power of his gifts substantially when he goes to Korea and beyond, he only uses it to move beyond danger or challenging situations, never to cause harm to others. It is a power that could be a terrible force in the hands of an evil person.
Hmm.
Thankfully for the world, that is not Adam.
Okay.
This story is about human interaction and suffering,
Mhm.
geopolitical tensions, US international affairs. Adam uses his gift to positive effect. That power is part of a larger story, but not the story itself.
Yes,
This capability is compelling, no doubt.
it is very much. And I wanted to ask you this next question, Mark, because I want the audience to appreciate the scale of the book. And I want us to talk about the pacing, the research, and how you kept the story from becoming either too small or too overwhelming. The novel moves through several layers. You have childhood memory, the Korean War history, North Korea, and U.S. political response. So, how did you balance the personal story with the broader geopolitical scope?
Yeah. Let me let me speak to each of those independently here. So when I was a young man, about Adam's age, um, I was sick like he was and in the hospital. And Adam's illness and suffering mirrors my personal experience. Luckily, like he did, I got better.
Okay.
Similarly, I had a great uncle that was lost at Iwo Jima in World War II, and he
Mm,
formed the basis of the Uncle Robert character, not in true biographical sense, but the nature of the fact that he was lost at war. and there was little information about him after that. But Robert became a Korean War POW that is
Mm,
central to the story. And there's no way a World War II POW could have been alive on the story timeline. So the soldier in this book became a Korean War corpsman. That's Uncle Robert. As
okay.
for North Korea today and what's going on there, the so called Hermit Kingdom, if you will, is a
Yeah.
mystery in plain sight.
Yes.
Very few people have been there, very few Americans have been there over the past many decades. As such, it's largely impenetrable and secretive and serves as a great test of Adam's abilities.
Mm,
The US political response to what happened is, I really enjoyed that part of writing the book because, um, Adam is overseas in a very odd place for a solo American to be. And in the course of trying to do good on a personal level for himself, he sets off inadvertently myriad consequences that the US and its allies must deal with. And Adam's relationship with the government in the book as it unfolds uh, is both adversarial on some levels
yes.
and then collaborative in the end. And that relationship is critical to the second half of the book.
All right. I'm not going to ask a follow-up question anymore about that. It's for our viewers and listeners to find out how Adam is going to use his power, that gift. It really is fascinating. It's a wonderful story. Now, I want to ask this question because you picked North Korea. North Korea is not just a backdrop in the novel. It becomes a place where questions of fear, loyalty, propaganda, and freedom come to the surface. So, what drew you to the Korean Peninsula as a central setting?
The tension between North Korea and its South Korean neighbors and their allies is a potential global flashpoint that requires constant monitoring. No one knows what may come next with the DPRK leadership. And in
Yes.
that light, in tandem with the historical military aspect of a story that I was looking for, kind of the transition from my relative in World War II to this fictional character in the Korean War, the oddness of North Korea, the secrecy, etc., was a perfect challenge, I thought, for Adam's gift.
All right, let's go back to Adam. Adam wants to do something honorable, but the title itself points to consequences that may not be fully intended. What did you want to explore between the difference, explore about the difference between good intentions and you have wise action?
Yeah, and that's really the great rub of the book. Adam has a deeply personal reason for going to North Korea. He wants
Yes.
to understand more about a family story that had no final resolution. Um, in so doing, he inadvertently causes consequences, as I mentioned,
Mm.
and that formed the basis for the title. And the result is that there's global geopolitical relations that are tested, and honestly, potentially brings World War III to the peninsula and to the Pacific at large.
Wow.
Um, as the story unfolds, both Koreas are involved. South Korea's allies, especially the US, but also Japan, Australia, and others are concerned. China's apoplectic about what's going on there. And
Okay.
the tension over Taiwan, which is also, a significant news story these days, ratchets up because the Chinese think that the U.S. is meddling in North Korea, and so they use Taiwan as a leverage point to try to gain some understanding, but also put pressure on the U.S. to stop what they believe the U.S. is doing in North Korea, when actually it's Adam on a personal mission. Um, Russia not wanting, any change in the North Korean dynamic sticks its nose into the resulting fray. So Adam's effort to, undertake this personal noble cause and go there, it causes ripples of concerns and then much more. None of the governments involved, not the least of which is the US, likes to
Mm,
be left out of the loop on major change in world order. And Adam is unknown to everyone, including the US.
yeah.
And he's creating a big scene in North Korea.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, he finds himself in the radar of both countries. Let's introduce another character without spoiling too much. Kang's
Mhm.
role gives the story a more personal view of life under oppression.
Yeah.
So, what did you want her character to reveal about the human cost behind political systems?
Kang is a personal character for the readers to relate through. You can talk about the suffering and the cruelty and the pain endured by the people of North Korea, but she puts a face on that storyline.
Yeah.
And she's also important to Adam as an ally as the story unfolds. She's brought into the story as an interpreter for the North Korean soldiers and government, and Adam, who doesn't speak Korean.
Yeah.
He could use his gift to affect that relationship, but he asks them to bring a translator so that he can communicate with them. And Kang winds up being the translator um, after events, transpire. Um, he understands more about what Kang's life has been like in North Korea, and he
Mm.
hopes to remove her from that oppression that she lives under as the story unfolds.
You mentioned earlier Uncle Robert.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about that a little bit from a different angle. The search for Uncle Robert connects Adam's personal mission to the memory of the Korean War and those who never came home. Why was why was that historical thread important to the story?
In backgrounding myself and learning more about the Korean War, I had some working knowledge of it, but I needed obviously to research myself, especially the campaigns and troop movements that are depicted in the book. I was I was startled to find out about the numbers of people that were lost as part of the conflict. There's always in every great conflict, there's the human loss, but there's
Yes.
this, especially those who go missing. That's always resonated with me. That's what happened with my great uncle when he died at Iwo Jima. And he was always kind of a near mythical man to me.
Mm,
Um, I knew nothing about him other than that story.
mm,
But he was always there in my consciousness for some reason. So, Uncle Robert was that missing soldier for Adam.
okay.
The Korean War was especially horrific for missing soldiers. I think there were like 3,000 soldiers that were left behind or lost. And for decades after the war, the US and other countries worked to identify the fate of those lost.
Okay.
Remains were unearthed and retrieved. Fates of others were disclosed. But in the end, I think there were a couple hundred heroes, as I recall, that were never accounted for. And as the story goes, Uncle Robert was one of those unaccounted for missing. Adam wants to know for sure. And I think the story um, of those lost in war is a fate that we can all relate to in a visceral sense,
Yes.
whether we are
Yes.
veterans or people simply with a beating heart.
The political leaders in the book respond to Adam's actions with, of course, we have suspicion, you have fear, strategy, and sometimes courage. What did you want readers to consider about leadership when events move faster than anyone can control?
The inadvertent consequences are the unforeseen results of Adam's very personal sojourn to North Korea, he never considers how his actions might impact the larger geopolitical stakes of the region around him, or how it might put adversarial tensions between nations on tilt. Um, when it does, he's surprised.
Mhm.
he he knows all of that noise, if you will, but it's far beyond him. He's just looking for information about his uncle. But
Yeah.
in so doing, he prompts the North Korean leader to embark on a more significant undertaking that really does cause problems for South Korea, for China, the US. And these events are unfolding, and none of the typical world powers are involved. And that causes great consternation and concern among the leadership of those nations.
Mark, I'm about to close this interview, but before doing so, I know our viewers and listeners, you have interested guys out there who would want to grab a copy of your book. Please tell us, where can we get a copy of it?
I hope you all read it and enjoy it. And I think the feedback I've been getting is it's compelling and a page turner. So I hope you find it to be so. You can find it on Archway Publishing's website, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads in hardcover, softcover, and e-reader digital formats. When you read it, please leave a review at the site you buy it from. It's very helpful. And I would love to hear from you. I can be reached at my website at inadvertentconsequences.com and on Instagram at Mark Anthony ICTV, Inadvertent Consequences, the voice, if you will, at Mark Anthony ICTV. Please comment or leave a review there as well. I would love the feedback. Book 2 of Inadvertent Consequences is in development, and Adam seeks to understand better why he is the way he is. How did he
Mm.
find his voice, his gift? And along the way, you can be sure he will cause more inadvertent consequences. And to be sure as well, the US intelligence community has not given up on getting to know Adam Tangere.
You have a very unique, fascinating book. Guys, you have the links on the description box on both our YouTube channel and our podcast platforms. Make sure you check it out. Adam, here's the last question before we close this interview. By the end of the book, readers are left asking whether one person should ever carry the power to change history. What question do you hope readers carry with them about Adam, responsibility, and the cost of changing the world?
There's been many books over the years about people going back in time and wanting to change a certain event to correct, the future from something devastating or whatever. And, you always ask that question, if you could do that, would you? And I think there's general agreement from people, I believe, that you can't change history because you can't know the unintended results of doing so. But beyond that concept of time travel, which is not what we're talking about here, I think we all have the power to change history, some small ways, some in large ways. And should we, if we could, as you suggested, and that's subject to debate. I think the bottom line is that Adam and his story, he's full of good intentions.
Yes.
And yet, those can have serious inadvertent consequences. In his mind, he accomplished what he set out to do and did some positive things along the way. He's pleased about that. Yet there are those in China and Russia, leaders in South Korea, especially here in the US, would prefer that he had not rocked that boat. But again, that's for people to debate. And I'm glad, as you bring it up, that it's fostering that sort of discussion. So again, I hope you read it. I hope you enjoy the story of Adam and his tale and find it compelling.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. I really appreciate hearing more about the heart behind inadvertent consequences, the voice, and the deeper questions it raises about responsibility, power, and consequence. It was a pleasure having you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Ray, and I couldn't be happier to be here. So
Thank
take
you,
care.
Mark. I also would want to give a big shout out to our awesome viewers and listeners for joining us for this interview. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the Author Roundup. I'm Ray Walters. Join me next time as we explore the world of supported self publishing, one indie author at a time.